Welcome to Mindful Live 93. It's a pleasure to have you here. I am your host, Nathan Springer. It is currently the 13th of June, close to halfway through the halfway month of the year in the year of our Lord 2022. And we're talking about the news and information and issues of the day, the current affairs, etc., etc., whatever we find interesting, and see how the conversation flows. Currently, we are streaming live on TikTok and on YouTube, no longer on Instagram, just for the moment. We giving Instagram a little rest, let them recover for a while, because Instagram decides to give pressure when it decides to give pressure, so we will give them an ease up. Now tonight, the topic is an interesting one. At least the start of the topic is a very interesting one. We're talking about the wage gap, because I did a contemplation today and spoke on some gender issues, but it's not just plainly on the wage gap. I want to those in the chat are already speaking about it over on TikTok, because we started already over on TikTok on the live. But let me paint the picture first. Let me draw the scenario first. So it is widely known now, statistically, that women prefer men who make more money than them. Now, that's a generalization. When that is said, what is not said behind that is the word most. Most women prefer men who make more money than them. Now, I understand that could also be a problematic statement for some people. Some people could have a problem with that too. I understand. I could see it. Some people might find like, okay, but I don't want a man who makes more money than me. Okay, well, you may be in that not the most number, but we know this for the most. And some people may say, well, that's not a preference, that's not my preference, but something I've noted, and I've said this before. Many times people, when you ask them something, they don't tell you the facts of the matter. They tell you what they might think you want to hear instead of the actual facts. So sometimes it's best to see how people behave instead of what people say. And when you look at how people behave, okay, many women may say that's not their particular preference, but the fact remains that most women end up with men who make more money than them. That's just a fact. That's just a fact. Most women end up with men who make more money than them. Okay. So, we're okay with that fact for now. We could settle right there. I think we could settle that. Mindful wedding. Wait. What am I missing there in the chat? This chat is speeding ahead way past me. But either way, most women prefer men who make more money than them. Now, if we look at this, and break it down to the reality of it, break it down to what it means in hard facts here, most women will be the majority of women. And most people we're talking about here are looking for monogamous relationships, at least on the woman's side. They're looking for monogamous relationships, meaning one-on-one. One me, one you, we come together and two of us stay one unit forever or however level. Right, good. That's what they're looking for. If the majority of women want whichever man they end up with to be making more money than them, that also means that the majority of women want the majority of men to make more money than them. Doesn't that line up? You all could tell me if that doesn't make sense to you, but it still have that relationship. Yes, there's still, what relationship are you talking about there, Troy Gilbert? I don't know what you're asking about specifically there. But yes, if that is the case, that is the social reality. The majority of women want the majority of men to make more money than them. So in that case, if you look out monogamy, yes, there are still monogamous relationships, and monogamy was never per se the standard, as in everyone always engaged in it, but monogamy was the cultural norm, which it still is. monogamy in Trinidad is the cultural norm. You don't see people going around married to multiple people on a regular basis in Trinidad and Tobago. It is the cultural norm to have a single partner. It is also very common in our culture to go outside of that monogamous relationship, but that doesn't change the fact that it is culturally the norm to have a monogamous partner. Some men, when they have money, they think they rule. Well, that's the thing. Because if that one man makes more money than the majority of women, then that means the majority of women want that one man. But I am thinking, if I'm thinking as for the majority of women here, I'm thinking on your behalf and trying to figure out a solution for this. I will see that getting the majority of men to make more money than the majority of women would solve that problem. Then every woman can get a man who makes more money than her. So women who believe in what do they call that, the hypergamy business, you want someone who makes more money than you. Women who believe that should be the fiercest proponents of the wage gap. They should be wanting the society to be structured in such a manner that all men make, well, not all, but most men make more money than most women. That's the way that most women can find a man who makes more money than them. If most men make the same amount of money or less than most women, then most women are not going to find their dream man. So, King Kaka says our economy doesn't support that though. I am not talking about whether our economy supports that. I know our economy doesn't support that. I think that was done on purpose. Good night, Wendy Medium Excel. Good night, Star Juliet. I think, listen, let's look at this. Let's wonder about this. If we were at the position now, this is not an excuse for sexism and bad treatment and misogyny. Don't take it at that. Like that. I'm talking about the business side of this, the economic side of this. If we were in a situation where every household needed a certain amount of resources to survive, that was always the case. Every household needs a certain amount of resources in order to survive. There was once upon a time where every company that hired someone, if they hired a family man, if they hired a mature person, they knew they had to provide enough resources in his salary to pay for an entire family. So one person, you had to pay that person enough to support an entire family. If you didn't, they would go find another job. But then, when equality in the job place was pushed and nearly forced, at one point in time it was women worked in the outside the home whether if they wanted to, and then it's now basically from an economic perspective that women work outside the home. Everyone works outside the home because they have to. You need those two salaries in order to keep a family rolling. So then the business people got twice the amount of workers, and they could have afforded to split the salary proportionally halfway. Because what in the previous time was needed to support an entire family, now you could split it in half because now two of them work and cumulatively they will get what it takes to support an entire family. So I think from the economic point of view, if I was a capitalist, if I'm a business, and I do see myself as kind of a capitalist, in that case, if I'm only on the money side of things looking for the best way to make money for my business, then I love this idea. That's not harming me anyway. Assuming that both people have the same skill set, some don't. That's true. But either way, when they come together and get nutrients, wouldn't their finances be considered one? Yes, their finances will be considered one. But here's the fact I am saying. Before they are married, the fact remains that most women want a man that makes more money than them. That's not nutrients. Sorry, married. That's just the fact. So I am asking the woman in this case, if you want a man who makes more money than you, won't you want there to be a wage gap? won't you want it to be that generally in society they pay men more? Isn't it more fair to say that both partners want to financially security as opposed to making it into a gender-based thing? I suppose you're talking about their blue zabuka. But here's the problem with that. As far as most studies go, as far as most studies go, most studies show that women are the ones who seek partners that are making more money than them. Consistently, men show in their decisions that it is not too much of a consideration. So it may sound more fair to say that both partners want financial security, but it's not reality, because most men don't seek financial security in their partners. Now, as I keep saying, and I keep having to iterate, I can say Keel. Thank you, Keel. As I keep saying, most does not mean all, and we understand that there are exceptions. Totally understood. I'm not negating the exceptions. There are some men who seek out wealthier partners, etc. I am not denying that. I'm not saying anything is bad in it. I'm not saying anyone is wrong. I'm not even making a moral judgment here. Well, that's what I'm doing, Mad Monkey Motorsports. That's exactly what I am doing. And I am saying in the case here, for most, if it's what most women want, then isn't it, and I'm not seeing many women answering in the chat, isn't it the case that most women should want a wage gap to exist? How do you expect, like if you think about it, if you divide the world into the males and the females, how do you expect how do you expect to meet a man who by and large makes more money than you if you expect all men to make the same amount as all women? If you take them as a group, the only way you could get the man that makes more men that make more money than you the only way that can happen is if by and large men make more money than women. So how can you expect or want or yearn to find a man who makes more money than you if you do not want at the same time some kind of wage gap? I answer more than once. No. So you do not want a wage gap? You do not want a wage gap, Nisi. Thank you for answering. Nisi says no. So Nisi, you are fine with, not fine with, you would prefer that your companion makes the same or less money than you. Who have more corn feed more fowl? That's your argument. Yes, that is true. That is kind of my argument. But the addition onto that argument, accurate. Who has more corn feeds more fowl. And the person who feeds more fowl gets more female attention. Females generally, women generally. I slide up by mistake. Slide up what? Oh, so you lost your position, Rooney. Oh, Rooney lost her first place position there. But yes, women generally prefer men who feed more fowl. So I am asking, if you prefer men who feed more fowl, as women in general, wouldn't you want men to be more capable of feeding fowls? Isn't that the suggestion there? And to me, I cannot understand how both, I'm lying. I can't understand how both exist. But it seems counterintuitive for both of those to exist. How could you want this and not want that at the same time? Because here's the reality. Let's do math. We're doing math here. If as a woman, you want, I keep saying I'm not saying anything is wrong with it. I'm not saying all. I am just talking about the majority. I'm talking statistically here, generally. If as a woman, you prefer your partner makes more money than you, fine, cool. So in this one instance, the male makes more money than the female. But if in general, you want no wage gap to exist, all you want is a wage gap between your man and you, But in general society, you want there to be no wage gap existing anywhere else. Well, for one, what that says is you want the top man in the whole society, which is fine and expected and makes sense. But it also suggests that you are saying to the other women that they must get the men that make less, because yours must be making more. But you don't want there must be wage parity all else, but yours must be making more. I don't understand how that spreads throughout the whole society and works like that. I don't understand the math of that. How does everyone get a partner who makes more money than them and not end up with a wage gap? You are leaving a big part out of your argument. In a large element of earning potential is ego. True. So, that Blue Zabuka, this is why I prefer the come up in and chatting. But I know you're on the down low hiding from that there too. So you're not talking. The chat produces just that little paragraph, and you have to read pieces. So I suppose you're saying that the ego has something to do with what is attracting and not just the more money in and of itself. This is how the people man dynamic does come into play. Oh geez, interesting. You're going scary off an end there. But that is actually true. If you want the preeminent person that makes the most, but everybody wants that person, it creates a kind of competition for that person. It does. But Blue Zabukai didn't get the finish of your argument there, the completion of your argument. And for the woman that say Nisi Roni, I don't know if Roni was answering that or just saying no because she regret that she lost her place. But do you not want that same thing that most women want? Do you not want a man that makes more money than you, Nisi? Is that what you're saying? You're okay with that? You would prefer that? A man who doesn't make more money than you? Or do you still prefer that? And this question, you all could jump in the live and talk if you all prefer, instead of only letting it through the chat. The chats are much slower. And we're not staying long tonight, just by the way. Tonight is a short live. It doesn't matter to me. Money isn't all where I'm concerned. It isn't all. Nisi, to put it bluntly, I don't believe you. How do you mean it doesn't matter? Of course it matters. Of course it matters, I think. Resources and the ability to acquire resources would always matter when it comes to a relationship. I remember I said this in a previous live, in a previous video. The reason many women prefer a man who makes more money than them, brings in more resources, it's not just because she's a gold digger and she's selfish or something like that. It's about securing your family. If you're a woman, think about it. If you are a woman and you are out here, you know that for 9 months you're going to be less than in prime healthy stage. Well, prime athletic stage, you very likely aren't going to be able to make the same amount of money, make the same resources, especially if you think backwards in history. For 9 months, for basically a year, because you have to heal after it too. For a year, you aren't going to be your top prime self in making resources. Let's imagine it's farming. So you are going to need somebody to be able to bring in that food for you. So obviously, you're going to look for someone who is able to produce more resources. Like, if I'm thinking about it, if you're a woman, and you're thinking about how much let's bring it to food. Food makes it a lot simpler, I find. I'm thinking we're back in the days where it's all food. We are all hunter-gatherers here. We are all hunter-gatherers. We don't yet have money to replace the food and resources with money. It's all food here. Say, as a lady, I am able to bring in 2 tons of food per year. I am able to bring in 2 tons of food per year. I am a young lady, presently 18, 19 years old, and I'm looking at my future and I want to pay up and have a family because, back then it was this, if you didn't have a family and make children, then our tribe was going to die. So yes, I'm looking to pay up and do what's expected of me from society. So I, as a young lady, I'm looking for a suitable suitor now. I can bring in 2 tons of food per year. But I know I plan on making a few babies. And for those years when I'm making those few babies, I cannot bring in 2 tons of food per year. So if I'm looking for someone to be my partner, would I want someone who also brings in 2 tons of food per year, or would I be looking for a man who brings in probably 5 tons of food per year? So he could bring in 2 tons to supply for me, an extra ton for my baby, and 2 tons for himself too. And that way, even when I make my baby, I don't even have to go back and hunt or gather. I have a man that brings in 5 tons of food per year. If you're a young lady bringing in your 2 tons at 19 years old, isn't that a sensible choice? That is a sensible choice, is it not? I was told I need to make 12 children if I want to make a wow, well, I'm not getting into that, Rooney. I did not tell you that. Whoever told you that would have to justify that on their own. I am drawing a very specific example. We're back in the hunter-gatherer days. We're talking about resources. We strip away money because money sometimes can make us not understand the true nature of resources. In a hunter-gatherer society, you still have to be productive to process the food as a woman. Blue Zabuka, you are right. I am not denying that, but I am asking a question that you are not answering. Of course, you still have to be productive. I'm not denying that. Yes, you still have to be productive. But as you are being productive, you are looking for a partner to join you in your production. If you are looking for a partner to join you in your production, would you be looking for a partner that only brings in the same 2 tons of food as you, or would you look for a partner who brings in more than the 2 tons? Where are the answers? When you put it that way, it makes sense. Exactly. It's sensible. I keep saying this, Nisi. Now, the problem, and that is the problem to me with gold digging. That is the problem with gold digging. It's like gold digging in the biological side, in the social side, is to a certain extent sensible. What most women do if they're sensibly looking for a partner. The problem with gold digging is it abuses that natural process. It abuses that natural process. And that's one of the main problems with it. But it is a sensible thing. More hands to help on the farm. But that right there is my point. And if we're looking back at it in that sense, pure resources. Yes, obviously, even though some women may not want to say it, if you are a woman at 19 years old in that hunter-gatherer society looking to choose a partner, that's my point about productivity. Gold diggers aren't usually productive. That is very true. Now, Blue Zabuka, the point you're drawing there is on the flip side. For the other man who is looking for the partner, for the man who is looking for the partner, obviously he's going to be looking for a productive person. Although many men may not look for, per se, the woman who brings in the most. We're looking back in that same hunter-gatherer society. A man might not look for the woman who brings in the most tons of food. He may be looking for a woman to complement the kind of food he brings in too. So yes, I agree. Yes, I am not disparaging a lady looking to increase her productivity. That has nothing to do with my question. You're all right. She doesn't bring in just 2 tons of food. She brings in 2 tons of food and produces it, and then she's able to exchange half ton of food after she produces it for another ton of food. So in totality, she gets 3 tons of food through her great productivity skills. We add that in there. This woman is a beast of a producer, bringing in 3 tons total. She brings in 2 tons by herself through her productivity skills, brings it to 3 tons. Still, as such a especially as such a productive woman. If you're such a productive woman, you're going out there hunting for the rabbit or whatever you catch, then going out there and picking the berries, bringing them in. I hope everyone is following the analogy I'm using. And then you're processing it. Let's say you make a little berry jam or something, and you carry it by a neighbor and tell them, have some of my berry jam that you make with only a little bit of your berries, and you exchange that for a gazelle that they have. So you bring in extra. So you're really productive as a woman out there. If you are that kind of a woman and you're looking for a partner, are you looking for a man who brings anything less than 5 tons of food to the table? Of course not. It would be ludicrous if you were. And bear in mind, we're talking hunter-gatherer because those societies make the human condition much simpler. So, of course, this woman is looking forward at a potential family. So, as a woman looking at a potential family being productive, of course you're looking for the man producing the most. Blue Zabukai, I am not saying that it is a bad choice. That's not what I am saying. I understand the choice. I am saying that seeing as that is the case, in such a hunter-gatherer society, if you are there looking for a man producing more food tonnage than you, bringing in more, and you are there and you have, let's say you have 10 sisters, all the sisters in your tribe, all the women in your tribe are like sisters to you. As you being part of the sisterhood, would you want the brotherhood of your tribe to generally bring in more food than the sisterhood? If you are a woman in that hunter-gatherer society wanting a man who brings in more tons of food than you, looking at it as the woman in general, wouldn't you want the men in general to produce or bring in more food than you? And in that case, wouldn't what you are asking for be a wage gap? Blue Zabuka says, well, just as a matter of survival, I would want the strongest man. Yes, Blue Zabuka, finally you say it, and it's the fact, and I know it's the fact. I'm not saying that as something derogatory. Of course, it is common sense. Of course, you want the strongest man. Of course, you want the man that could supply the most. And do you think that changes in modern society? Do you think humans have changed that much, that what men want and what women want changes so drastically? Like, okay, our society is safer, but it's still that kind of competitive push to secure your goals and dreams and meet your needs and supply your resources, etc., etc., etc. So, okay, yes, it has expanded. Humanity and our societies have expanded to a much wider environment, but and the general needs and wants very similar. And in that case, wouldn't you still want the strongest man in our modern society too? And if most women want that same thing, wouldn't most women in that same line be, in a sense, asking for a wage gap? And I thought about, I can remember sometime this weekend, I was just sitting and I was having this thought. I was thinking about it, like the wage gap and the discussion about the wage gap, etc., etc. And we know the discussions, whether it exists or not, and we know how that goes. But in terms of why it's there, if people want it or not, to me, it seems like in our society, if we were to choose a gender that would want the wage gap more, it would be women. The means of production are different now, so I don't think your argument holds water in a modern society. I understand what you're saying. The means of production are different now. So, you don't have to go out and hunt. You don't have to go and gather berries. You don't have to hunt there. True, it's different. But isn't it to some extent following the same rules of food, shelter, security, aren't we filling the same roles that we always filled, just with more complex things? We're filling the same food roles. Blues Avocat says she just has to get a BBL and rock back. If you don't know what a BBL is, well, Google it. I won't be the explanation for you. but to me that's always been that, not always, but that's been my question. That's been playing on my head. To me, it seems like culturally, socially, what many women say they want seems to be leaning and leading directly to a wage gap. That's the outcome of what many women say they want. What women are saying, I want, well, that sounds like a wage gap to me. It really does. All right. Let's leave the tentative gender issues and jump over to Trinidad quick before we dive out, because I have a point to make before we end tonight. And as I said, the live wouldn't be too long tonight. We'll be ending not too long from now, but we're jumping over to the whole school incident, this whole school bacchanal that has been happening, the violence in schools. We know the incident that happened, was it last week, where one young lady stabbed another young lady, and it was alleged that the victim of the stabbing was actually the perpetrator of the bullying, and she was a bully over a consistently long period of time, and this young lady retaliated as such. In fact, the young lady's father said that she had made numerous reports about the bullying that she had to endure in that school. She was frustrated about it. She made a report even the very same day of the incident. So there are those facts overarching the entire incident. Now we know the young lady who did the violent attack was expelled from the school. She was thrown out of the school by the Ministry of Education. Now, there has been quite a bit of conversation on this, and I saw someone saying, and to some extent, I don't fully disagree with them taking some discipline. I don't disagree with them taking disciplinary action. It needs disciplinary action. Something like this requires disciplinary action. I don't think it's an incident that should have gone without any kind of consequence. But first off, I think because of the nature of something like this, it needs a thorough investigation before you engage in with whichever disciplinary action you think is suitable. Something I've always noted, and I try to keep this in mind as I grow older. As a young person, I remember it, and you look at young people and it's still the facts. The facts remain, young people are extremely sensitive to bias and unfair treatment. It's one of the things that young people pick up on the easiest. Every young person is extremely sensitive to this. Every young person is extremely sensitive to this. And in a situation like this, where one may actually be the victim over a longer period of time, I don't think you should have any intention of re-victimizing someone. And I went through a discussion on a Facebook post of someone where they were saying that the violence could never be justified. And I know we spoke about this Friday, I believe, but I had to bring it up again because of the discussion I had. The violence could never be justified. And I went through the discussion on that. I don't actually agree with that. That violence in this case could never be justified. If someone is under attack and they see that they may be under imminent threat of grievous bodily harm, I could see why violence may be a justifiable reaction in that case. Now, what some people have pointed out, is that this does not bring solution. There are no solutions here. And granted, I don't deny that this may not bring solutions, because what they were saying is the violence may beget more violence, the violence may spawn more violence. After this occurs, then it may have a reciprocal something, vengeance, and someone come back, and the violence and the violence and the violence and the violence, and violence is not the solution. It doesn't solve the matter. I agree, violence will not solve this matter, but the fact of the matter is this young lady who was involved in the incident couldn't solve the matter either. If you are the young lady, you are the tiniest, you are at the bottom rung. You are the tiniest screw in this whole machine. In this whole system, you are the tiniest screw. If this system is malfunctioning, you are not the person that is able to solve the system. You are not the person that is able to solve the system. As it stands, the system has many problems. But as it stands for the young lady, your primary problem is not being seriously harmed by the people who have the intention of seriously harming you. So the solution you are looking for is getting out of being harmed. The solution you are looking for is not how to prevent school violence and how to stop all children from beating up on each other and how to stop bullying in schools. That's not the solution you're looking for as a 15-year-old girl being circled by numerous other girls who obviously have the intention of beating you. Your solution, your goal is, I don't want to die. I don't want to be beaten badly. And if that is your goal, then did what was done accomplish that solution? I am not saying it's a good thing. But here's the problem in this. When a system is malfunctioning, you cannot expect the people at the most basic rung of the system to still act as if the system functions well. If you want that old traditional family, you want to be daddy provider, you want your name to be sole breadwinner, you want a woman to stay at home and keep the family and make you sandwiches when you come home and mind the children. Now, if you as a man want that, you find a woman who wants that too, you'll have some children. If you as the man stop winning the bread, you're the sole breadwinner, but you stop winning that bread, you cannot expect the woman to stay in the house and keep making a home when you don't win the bread. You are not keeping your end of the bargain. And then, if you are not winning the bread, mommy isn't keeping the home, you cannot expect the child in this situation to function as a perfect child because they are the bottom, they are the tiniest part in this entire system. If no other part in the system is fulfilling their roles, you cannot now look at the child and say, bad child, you are a bad child, you are not fulfilling your roles. No. And if you are saying, how do we solve this? How do we solve the family? You don't go to the child and say, child, here's what's going to happen. We're going to solve the family with you. You could solve the next generation of families with the child, but you cannot solve this present family with the child. You solve it from the parents. So if this young lady is faced with imminent danger and does what she does in her short-term solution for it, you can, but it's unfair to look at her as her being the only wrong one when the system failed the entire way up. So if you're expelling her, to me, how I see this, the consequences for something like this are supposed to be gradual. Those with the most responsibility are supposed to face the worst consequences. So, who is most responsible for the school system? Well, the Minister of Education. Well, if you expel the schoolgirl for a systemic failure of the entire education system, then at least you're supposed to expel the minister. And then, who was the supervisor for that region? How can the schools in that region be existing in that manner? Suspend the supervisor. Who was the principal for that school? How can a girl be repeatedly bullied over and over, give reports and nothing be done? Expel the principal too. Who was the safety officer in charge? How can a student under your supervision, who you are supposed to be ensuring the safety of, be so bullied continuously? Well, you are to be expelled too. If you are to expel the person at the end of the system, everyone involved in the chain that failed the young lady going all the way up should be expelled too. You cannot expel this person is the reactant in this situation. They're the reactant. They had no control over this situation. They don't have control over the school they go to. They probably don't have control over if they go to school or not. Their parent forces them to go. Think, like, for a moment, put yourself back in a 15-year-old child's perspective, because this is the annoying part to me in this. Many people seem like they cannot put themselves back in that body, in that mind frame of a 15-year-old child, and understand how trapped you can feel and understand how frustrated you can feel here. I do not have a choice about anything inside my life here. I didn't have a choice about the school I went to. I don't have a choice if I go to school or not. My parents decide that. I don't have a choice about how I look. And I may be teased about that. I don't have a choice about how much money my family makes. I may be teased about that. I don't have a choice about what time I go to school. The school determines that. I don't have a choice about what time I leave school. The school determines that. Everyone knows that. So if they want to victimize me, they know exactly where to find me. So I tell the school, listen, this girl is victimizing me over and over and over. I have no choice, no control over what the school does to this girl. Apparently the school decides to do nothing. I have no control over that. I obviously have no control over the girl because she has her own will. The only thing I have control over is myself and my body. And I know that these people want to seriously harm my body. How can you punish me for acting in my own self-interest in the only area I had control over, while you, the senior people, the adults in the system, failed all along the line? I don't understand how that's fair. I just don't. It's beyond me. It's beyond me. And if it was said that, and after a full investigation was done and it was found out that the facts that were told did not line up with the facts revealed in the investigation, and then the young lady was expelled, well, I'll be like, okay, well, I guess I don't know all the facts. But for the young lady's father to be saying that they never spoke to her, so okay, we already went through all the young lady didn't have control over. That's very true, Blue Zabuka. That is very true. We already went through all the things the young lady didn't have control over. Then now it comes to even her own expulsion. She didn't even have control over it. She didn't even have a say in it. Right? You didn't even ask. You didn't even ask. And you see, not asking could come from the point of view, like the guy that I said, who spoke to me and said there's no justification for violence. While I just went through, and from a 15-year-old perspective, you could see very well why there would be justification in her mind for that violence then. No agency. Very true, Blue Zabuka. Very true. And like, to me, I put my mind in the mind of a 15-year-old there, and even worse, a 15-year-old girl. And if you want to be honest about it, girls go through a different puberty than guys, which could be more traumatic during certain points in it. And to put yourself in that position, already being bullied, and then you're a national news. That's insane to think our Ministry of Education, that is supposed to be specialized in dealing with children, it's insane to me to think that this was how they dealt with it. And here's the thing, if the ministry thinks this will solve the matter and they can go ahead with their inept, incompetent system and these kind of problems aren't going to surface again, they are wrong. You could look over in Guyana. Recently in Guyana, there were teachers fleeing the school because there are gangs being formed in the school. Because here's the thing, as I said, if this system fails, individuals in the system aren't going to just act like the system is still functioning. They're going to organize themselves on their own. I don't know how many of you know the history of gangs. When we think about gangs, we think about the American style of gangs for the most part. The history of many of those inner city urban gangs. The history of most of them. The history of most of them, regardless of what racial majority they might be, most of them formed during times in the inner city where people of that specific ethnicity or people of that specific area were being victimized and they didn't have the authorities to help them. If I live in my community and let's say Venezuelans come down, as they did, and they move into one specific community in an area, and people Trinidadians start to victimize them, and then let's put some geography there. Let's say somehow the Venezuelans got most of Silats and they lived in Silats there. And then residents of, let's say, neighboring Beetham Gardens were victimizing them. And let's say the police did nothing to help the Venezuelans of Silats. What is going to happen is not that the Venezuelans of Silats are just going to bend over and allow themselves to die. They're going to form into gangs to protect themselves. That's literally how nearly every one of the gangs that still plagues the world were formed. Down to the mafia out in Italy. That's how they were formed. Protection for their own community. That's what systemic failure creates. People don't just fall over and die and leave it. They create their own solutions. And the problem with creating your own solutions is that you end up with the problems we found out. The whole problem with tribalism, why we started to try, to get these unified countries where there are codes of law to observe. You see, if there's a gang in Central, a gang in South, a gang in North, the way we solve our problems is our gangs go at it until one of us dies. And since we prefer not to have that whole bloody business and, more peace in our country, we try to make our systems work. So, hey, Ministry of Education, if your systems continue failing, this is what is going to keep happening. And eventually it's going to get worse. More gangs are going to be created. Because if someone realizes, okay, well, I can't defend myself one-on-one against a bully who has 4 partners with them, and if I stab someone, I'm going to be expelled. You know what I'm going to do? Well, me and my brethren, them, we have to roll together too. So me and my brethren, them, going to roll together. And maybe we'll make some friends with some people outside of the school to make sure we're protected. And well, seeing as we get into fights, then we'd end up keeping some arms, a little hockey stick, a little chain or something, and hide it somewhere outside the school. And eventually we must select a name for the WhatsApp group. So then we have a name for our whole group, and then all we're a gang, just like that. Whoops. From going to school and not wanting to be bullied and taxed, we formed into a gang, just like that. And it's not obviously when you're talking about yourself. If I'm talking to one of the individuals in the gang, I'm not going to say it's not your fault. I'm going to say it's your fault and you should get out of the gang. But if you're talking about on the social side, on the societal side, you don't blame the last rung in the ladder. You blame the people who created the situation, who created the environment that makes such a solution, makes such an option seem like the most useful one. I hope none of my friends want to form a gang with me because I go on as trouble. Informer Rooney. Alright folks, that's all I have for now. As I said, the live isn't going to be too long. We aren't going into that after live chat over there on TikTok. Nobody decided to jump in the live and chat with me. As I said, the live now, you can jump in and chat and it will come through the recording into YouTube. Good night, Blue Zabuka. As usual, it's a pleasure having you here. It was nice. It's a pleasure having all of you here who usually are here and decide to sit in the night and converse about random topics and information with me. Thank you. Thank you. Y'all are weird just like me. Thank you. It's much appreciated. I hope you're educated, informed, or entertained, and I will see you guys tomorrow night. I don't want my thoughts trapped on YouTube. Tonight was ladies' night. Respect Nathan Rose. Hey, big name there, big name there. Good night. That's a good name. That's a good name. I like that name. It means you're going to do great things, Mr. Nathan something. Rose son. Oh, Nathan Rose son. So are we in a gun? Thanks so much. Yes, interesting. We will talk. Alright, latest folks. So are we in a gang? We can't talk that on the people internet. We had to create the what's this? Telegram. Telegram is the secret app for that. Latest folks. Peace.